Hello, BookTube. I'm going to do a little video here about science fiction anthologies. Um, those of you who watch Steve Donahue, he's been piling up on the science fiction anthologies, collecting them. I think primarily online ordering them, some of the older ones, which I really like. Then that started a conversation that Sean D. Standfast, a great channel, also had about the history of science fiction anthologies, the role of short stories, novellas, etc., and editors who compiled these things. And then Jason Harrigan, another great collector and reader of science fiction and science fiction short stories, discussed some of his anthologies, some of the stuff he enjoyed. These are all channels I watch all the time, and booktubers I really admire, and I love it because I can sit there and say, I didn't know about that, okay, and write it down, or I forgot about that, and it's great fun. Of course, Steve has visited here in Vermont with me many times, and we've sat late into the morning discussing forgotten science fiction authors, how much we loved the anthologies and the science fiction digest magazines. Of course, both Jason and Sean mentioned that too. So I thought I'd do a little bit of what I have left. You'll see there's a bit of a nostalgia thing going on because most of us had large collections as younger people. We're all of similar age. And all of us no longer have those. Sean talks about having a huge collection of digest magazines, amazing science fiction and fantasy, Worlds of If, World of Wonder, these, Analogue. I had literally thousands of them. The cover art was unbelievable. The stories, I can picture them in my head, and they're gone. They're long gone, and it's sad. But this is what happens over a lifetime. So your libraries go through, you lose them. In my case, lost a very large personal library. And sometimes you move on in interest and then come back to it and wish you hadn't gotten rid of things. And I've done that too. So the digest magazines, I've got a recent one. Here's an Analogue science fiction, in fact, July and August of 2017. There was a time when I would have never missed an issue of this, or had Asimov's from the beginning, or the magazine of fantasy and science fiction, and then many others. So that's what we're talking about here. The short stories, sometimes novellas, sometimes serials, they run. And I'm going to show you a few I have, a few they've probably mentioned, and I know that all three of those gentlemen will know almost every single thing I have here. But, yeah, I'm starting to pay more attention to see if I see them, and I'll grab them, but you don't see them much. And, of course, with the world the way it is right now, you're not going to get out, or most of us aren't going to get out to buy any. So, one thing I like to point out here is John Clute. This is an illustrated encyclopedia of science fiction. It's a little beat. You can learn a lot about, like, here's a issue of Asimov's science fiction magazine here, if I can do this. Right here, there's Interzone, right there. Let's see what else we have here. Magazine of Fantasy Science Fiction, Fantastic Universe. There's an Analogue. What else do we have? Nebula, If Science Fiction down the bottom there. Galaxy, which I had tons and tons of those. So these are what they call the post-war boom. The golden age of pulps here. I'll just give you a view of what some of those look like. So if you see these, and you could, a lot of them cost a lot of money. Sean talked about how inexpensive it was to collect the ones he did. Mine was the same case. Sometimes I'd get a big bag, paper bags back then, grocery bag, just stacked with them, and maybe pay 50 cents. People read them and didn't collect them as much. Now, of course, people do, so you'd pay a premium unless you make that wonderful find, which sometimes happens. So that gives you an idea what they look like. Speaking of John Clute again, and in this case Peter Nichols, this is the Encyclopedia of Science Fiction. A lot of times you can look up these authors, the pseudonyms they used. This is just incredible resource. Actually, a gift from Steve Donahue when he realized I no longer had my copy, and I think Jason held up a copy of that volume. And then to continue the history theme, Trillion Year Spree, A History of Science Fiction, Brian Aldous. Right here. Amazing book. Amazing book. Aldous was an incredible anthologist, novelist, and historian of science fiction. So you can pick up a lot by reading something like this. So here's a convention. Northwest Science Fiction Society proudly presents NorwestCon, number 8, March of 1985. So it talks about conventions, talks about here's New World. So here you have you can learn so much. There's John Campbell, the editor, legendary editor, and then of Astounding, and here you have more of the magazines and all this sort of stuff. So you can learn a lot. A lot of this is being studied now. It's become very important. Here was a recent book, Astounding, John W. Campbell, Isaac Asimov, Robert A. Heinlein, L. Ron Hubbard, and the Golden Age of Science Fiction, by Alec Navala Lee. Disturbing history, because, of course, it's worth a read. Fascinating. Paperback Junkie on his channel, he actually had 2 channels. He had Paperback Junkie, but he also had BookTube TV, I think it was called. Did an interview with this author that was fantastic. So there's that. And then an anthologist and historian of science fiction, you're going to see as I go through the collections of anthologies, which I'll do real quick here, is David Hartwell. And this is Age of Wonders, Exploring the World of Science Fiction. I got this on a trip to the Brattle. I think the first time I went down to meet with Steve. It's a signed edition. I got this for a couple bucks on the book cart lot. And just would really, really love to go back down there. But that doesn't seem to be happening anytime soon. I'm trying to get these things out of the way so I have room to work. So Sean started off his collections of anthologies discussing this one I'm going to start with. And this is Famous Science Fiction Stories, Adventures in Time and Space, 35 Great Stories of the Worlds of Atomic Power, Rocket, Robots, Time and Space Machines, etc., edited by Raymond J. Healy and J. Framis McComas. Mine's a modern library giant. Now, this came out, when did it come out? Mine is 1957. So Sean mentioned that there was an edition that had 5 stories taken off the end. Mine starts with Requiem by Robert A. Heinlein. The names are unbelievable. Don Stewart, Lester Del Rey, Louis Paget, A. Vanvo, Willie Lay. A lot of you will remember he did a lot of the books about rocket ships and space age stuff. Asimov, one of my favorite stories of all time, which is Nightfall. Harry Bates, Anthony Boucher, Robert A. Heinlein again. So L. Sprague de Camp. And I don't know. So the last 5 stories in here are by, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He Who Shrank by Henry Haas. By His Bootstraps, Anson MacDonald. Some of you will know who that is. The Star Mouse by Frederick Brown, Correspondence Course by Raymond F. Jones, and Brain by S. Fowler Wright. So I don't know if that's what Sean was talking about, or if there's 5 that are even missing from this. So I went to a book that's an old standby, Anatomy of Wonder. It's a critical guide to science fiction, edited by Neil Barron. And I looked up under, so there's a big entry on this particular volume, and I could not figure out the what the 5 are he was mentioning. So that's an ongoing project unless he figures it out first, and which would be interesting. So then you have certain names that will start showing up when you do this stuff. So science fiction short stories were where it was at. You had paying magazines. You can make a regular paycheck. A lot of these times, Robert Heinlein wrote under a different name, right? You'd write, if you were flooding the market, you'd want to have pseudonyms, and that's where something like this comes in handy, or the science fiction encyclopedia there, or any of those. But some editors were also authors. Show up, when I was younger, showed up all the time. And an example of that, sometimes with these paperbacks, this is The Shape of Things, edited by Damon Knight. Has Ray Bradbury, Theodore Sturgeon, A. Vango, C.M. Kornbluth, Anthony Boucher, John D. MacDonald. Some of you remember the Travis McGee Mysteries. Some of these authors did many things. L. Sprague de Camp, Maury Leinster, James Blish, who did the popularization of the Star Trek novels. The episodes in a run of books. And this originally came out, of course, is very yellowed. It's very old. This is 1965 Popular Library edition. So a little bit of a treasure there. Then sometimes you'd have these anthologies that were put together to memorialize something. In this case, it's John W. Campbell, the editor of Astounding. And this is Astounding, John W. Campbell Memorial Anthology, edited by Harry Harrison, and introduction by Isaac Asimov. Wonderful volume. See, some of these I've got library tape on. The Final Salute to John W. Campbell, editor extraordinaire, by the writers he developed in astounding science fiction. So you have Poul Anderson, Isaac Asimov, Hal Clement, who did some really hard science stuff, Gordon R. Dixon, there's a new Dorsey story in here, Harry Harrison with a Death World story, Mac Reynolds, Clifford D. Simak, who is Sean D. Stanfast is a huge fan of, George O. Smith. You also have Alfred Bester, Theodore Cogswell, Theodore L. Thomas, and Theodore Sturgeon. And Kelly Frias, the artist, not only did this, but let me see if I find one. So here's a fantastic story, Brothers by Gordon R. Dixon. So we do these little lead pieces. Another great author who edited was Robert Silverberg. And this is The Mirror of Infinity, edited by Robert Silverberg, a critic's anthology of science fiction. In this, just a paperback, Perennial Library, Harper and Row. And it came out in 1973 is this one. Okay. So you have your introduction. You have H.G. Wells, John W. Campbell with Twilight, Isaac Asimov with Nightfall again. Each has a foreword, though. So say H.G. Wells is the star, has a foreword by Jack Williamson. John W. Campbell's Twilight has a foreword by Aldous Budrys. And you just go on and on. So Lewis Paget, Arthur C. Clarke's The Sentinel, Robert Sheckley's Specialist, James Bliss, Common Time, Cordwainer Smith, The Game of Rat and Dragon, which Cordwainer Smith is one of Steve Donohue's favorite authors, Robert A. Heinlein, J.G. Ballard, Harlan Ellison, I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, favorite of Todd the Librarian. And Borges and all that. This book is literally falling apart, but I wouldn't part with it for anything. And then the science fiction writers came up with a Hall of Fame series. And I used to have a lot of the paperbacks. I replaced a volume of the paperbacks with 2 science fiction book club hardbacks, so I passed the paperbacks on to Steve. But I still have a rather beat up copy of Science Fiction Hall of Fame. Again, this is edited by Robert Silverberg. Some of my favorite stories growing up, I remember getting this new. Looked a lot better then, 1970. Avon published in 71. One of my favorite stories of all time starts right off, The Martian Odyssey by Stanley Weinbaum. Then again, you have Twilight by John W. Campbell. You'll see repeats like that when they really have a reputation. Excuse me. You have, Lester Del Rey, Robert Heinlein's Road Must Roll, Theodore Sturgeon, Nightfall by Asimov again, Mimsy Where the Boar Grows by Paget, Huddling Place by Clifford D. Simak. You have Frederick Brown, Murray Leinster, Judith Merrill herself, an excellent anthologist, and one of the ones I had, I wish I still had, was old paperback of England Swings SF. Scanners Live in Vain by Cordwainer Smith. You have Ray Bradbury, C.M. Kornbluth, Richard Matheson, Fritz Leiber, James Blish, Arthur C. Clarke, The 9 Billion Names of God, which is one of my favorite short stories of all time. Jerome Bixby, Tom Godwin, Alfred Bester, Fondly Fahrenheit. Damon Knight himself, a legendary anthologist. Daniel Keyes, Flowers for Algernon, and then Roger Zelazny, A Rose for Ecclesiastes. So quite a volume. Volume 2, which I have broken up in 2 parts, is edited by Ben Bova, who was a writer and an editor of repute. But these are novellas of all time, but still an anthology. And just give you some names: Asimov, Blish, Boudris, Cogswell, E.M. Forster, surprisingly enough, Frederick Pohl, James Smits, T.L. Sherrod, Wilmer H. Shiras, Clifford D. Simak, Jack Vance. Let me see what the Simak story is in here. This is volume 2B. I did them backwards, but you get the point. The Big Front Yard by Simak, and The Moon Moth by Vance. And then volume A, Poole Anderson, John W. Campbell, writing as Don A. Stewart, that thing we're talking about with pseudonyms sometimes. Lester Del Rey, Robert Heinlein, C.M. Kornbluth, Henry Kuttner, and C.L. Moore, writing as Lawrence O'Donnell. Eric Frank Russell, Cordwainer Smith, Theodore Sturgeon, H.G. Wells, and Jack Williamson. So let's see what the Cordwainer Smith is in here. And the Ballad of Lost Seamel. So good stuff. So my science fiction, of course, was not just magazines. I grew up I was born in the very first part of the 1960s, and grew up with Star Trek, the original series. So, and when it was gone, and then we're left with nothing, right? So, this anthology is 2 volumes. It's Star Trek: The New Voyages and Star Trek: The New Voyages 2. These were edited by Sandra Marshak and Myrna Colbreth. This one has a foreword by Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry, and with introductions on the stories from Shatner, Captain Kirk, Leonard Nimoy, Spock, DeForest Kelley, who is Dr. McCoy, James Doohan, who is Scotty, Michelle Nichols, who is Uhura, George Takei Sulu, and then we have the second one. I don't think has quite the level of introductions, but these were original collections of stories based on that whole shared world. And you started, and there's been more of these for different worlds. I think, was it Robert Asprin did a series of them? You had, oh my gosh, I think Wild Cards by George R. R. Martin, right? It was that ongoing thing where different writers do it. So then the more traditional, this is Donald A. Walheim, who did lots and lots of these. This is the 1986 annual World's Best SF. Illustration for Sailing to Byzantium, one of the famous stories in this particular one by Robert Silverberg. And I used to get these all the time. So Donald A. Walheim is who you'll recognize for the Yellow Spine paperbacks, DAW books. And how you like this has a Boris Vallejo book plate. I'll try to cover the person's name because I bought this used. Isn't that great? So you would get those when you're... I was in the science fiction book club forever, and I miss it tremendously, and I wish I'd saved them. So you have, I'm just going to throw out Ian Watson, J. Brian Clark, Gardner Dozois, Jack Dan, and Michael Swanwick did one called The Gods of Mars. Of course, play off the original title of A Princess to Mars by Edgar Rice Burroughs. But this has modern, at least at that time, perceptions of Mars compared to Burroughs, and a wonderful story. Lucius Shepard, Jaguar Hunter, and Sailing to Byzantium by Robert Silverberg, which is a great story. J.G. Carr, Harlan Ellison with Virgil Odium at the East Pole, which originally appeared to Omni magazine I used to have piles of and no longer do. So that was a big slick. That wasn't a digest-sized magazine. Connie Willis, wonderful writer, The Curse of Kings, Frederick Pauls, Fermi and Frost, and C.J. Shera, another author I really enjoy, Potts. So this would have been a book club edition, and I wish I had been wise enough to keep them. Then I'm going to get to, I'll do this one first, and this is where you have multiple editors. This is edited by Isaac Asimov, who did a lot of editing also, among everything else he did. Charlie G. Waugh, and Martin H. Greenberg. And Martin H. Greenberg's a name you see all the time. This is the 7 Deadly Sins of Science Fiction. So it's sort of a theme anthology. And this, Fawcett Crest, New York, again, a book club edition. This came out in 1980. So you have, for Sloth, you have Sail 25 by Jack Vance. For Lust, you have Peeping Tom by Judith Merrill. For Envy, you have The Invisible Man Murder Case by Henry Slessor. Pride is Galley Slave by Isaac Asimov. Anger is Divine Madness by Roger Zelazny. You have 2 for Gluttony, which makes sense, right? You have The Midas Plague by Frederick Pohl and The Man Who Ate the World by Frederick Pohl. Avarice, you have Margin of Profit by Poul Anderson. And Covetousness, never can say that, The Hook, the Eye, and the Whip by Michael G. Coney. So it's one of these things where they come up with an idea, everybody writes a story or 2, in the case of Gluttony, and there you have it. So this next group of books, and let me just do it this way. So you have the year's best. These are edited by David G. Hartwell and Catherine Kramer. We saw Hartwell, well, I put it back up here, History of Science Fiction, but so this is year's best 13, and I don't have full runs of these, and I wish I did. The Science Fiction Book Club with their logo there. But again, the little indicator right there. This is 2008. So let me see. Tony Ballantyne, John Kessel, Gene Wolfe, Memorare, Cage Baker, Peter Watts, Stephen Baxter, No More Stories, Robin Hitchcock, Gwyneth Jones, Mark Laidlaw, An Evening on a Sparrow, Nancy Kress, wonderful writer, Greg Egan, Gregory Benford, Let's see, Karen Joy Fowler, Terry Bisson, Pirates off the Somali Coast, Ian McDonald, Tony Ballantyne, Bruce Sterling, the illustration, so and many more. I'm not reading all of them. I'd be here all day. But then in a paperback version, just a couple years later, again, David G. Hartwell and Catherine Kramer. And let's see, here we have Ken McLeod, Elizabeth Bear, Ken Liu, All Together Elsewhere, Vast Herds of Reindeer, Mercurier de Rivera, Nettie Okafor, Wahala, Carl Schroeder, Paul Park, Charlie Jan Anders, Neil Gaiman and Weep Like Alexander, Judith Moffat, Gregory Benford again, Madeline Ashby, Robert Reed, Karen Hewler, Tony Ballantyne, Bruce Sterling, The Master of the Aviary, Pat McEwen, Michael Swanwick, For I have lain me down on the stone of loneliness, and I'll not be back again. Gwyneth Jones, Nancy Kress, again, I enjoy her stuff, Elliot Rope, Genevieve Valentine, Yoon Ha Lee, A Vector Alphabet of Interstellar Travel, and then Carolyn Ives Gilman, The Ice Owl. And Hartwell also did this masterpiece, again with Catherine Kramer, and this is Ascent of Wonder, The Evolution of Hard SF. Tour. Again, this was a book club one. And I'll tell you when it came out, and I'm not going to read everything in it. I'll read you some of the authors. This came out, if I knew what I was doing, it would help, wouldn't it? This came out in 1994. This is another one I got off the sale lot at the Brattle when I was with Steve. I've had this for several years now. So I have Gregory Benford, James Bush, Arthur C. Clarke, Hal Clement. I'm not going to read them all. Robert Heinlein, Henry Kuttner, Philip Latham, C.L. Moore, Bob Shaw, Kate Wilhelm, Gene Wolfe, Asimov, J.G. Ballard, John W. Campbell, Arthur C. Clarke, Gordon R. Dixon, Randall Garrett, Dean Ing, C.M. Kornbluth, Ursula K. Le Guin, Anne McCaffrey, Larry Niven, Ruddy Rucker, Clifford Simak, John Sladek, Bruce Sterling, Theodore Sturgeon, Ian Watson, Poul Anderson, Asimov, Ballard again. I don't know why do they do that? Oh, okay, I see why. So if you have a name in these that keeps repeating, like Clark did a couple times in Asimov, it's because they're in these three ages. So Cornwader Smith, or is that how that works? Or is it how they divided up the stories? I don't even remember. I read through it. The thing with the anthologies, part 1, part 2, and part 3. So they do have them broken up. And I wonder what the theory is of the on the introductions, and these are great. So the break, they don't really tell you why well, I'm sure they do inside, why they're broken up that way. So I'll just hold it up so you can always stop your screen there if you want to see who's in this. And then one last thing I want to do here as I ramble on, is the city, or another theme. We had, you have the theme with the 7 Deadly Sins. You can also, a lot of times you'll see them on cities, or, and you do that with mysteries too, like the Sleuths of Boston or whatever. This is City of Weird, 30 Otherworldly Portland Tales, edited by G.G. Little, and this was quite a find. I mean, Portland, of course, those of you who are into comic books know that Portland is a great city for comic books, Portland, Oregon in this case. And restaurants and beer, you got a craft beer, you got to wonder how that's going right now. Hopefully well, because they're wonderful. But they also are a great city for this sort of thing. And I found this anthology, was thrilled. I used to have one called Very Large Array that had George Railroad Martin and a few others, and that was a collection from New Mexico, from when I lived out in New Mexico. So you get those kinds of collections. I wish I still had that one. Haven't seen that in years. So you have Renee Denfield, Bridget Winter, Leslie Watt, Leanne Krantz, Dan DeWeese, Brian Reed, Stephanie Friel, Jonah Barrett, Jonathan Hill. Oh my gosh, it just goes on and on and on. Tons of just treasures. I'm not going to read them all. And this came out in 2016. So when you find things like this, they can be great fun. Snap them up. So I probably have some more around here. I certainly have more histories of science fiction and stuff. But I thought to go with the conversation we're having, this is probably enough to show at any one time. I have no idea how long this is going on. Oh, 23 minutes. Yeah, I'm rambling. So, yeah, find some old collections. Read some of these older short stories. It is what science fiction was. And what I still very much enjoy. And loved hearing what everybody else said. So anybody else who's want to carry on the conversation, it's a fun one. Thank you, BookTube.